Hi friends, this is your friendly neighborhood instructional consultant Josh Flores, and I'm here today to talk about our instructional framework. I thought it would be great to just have a video recording, and actually it was through feedback suggestions from previous live in-person PD that I had the request for some videos just giving an overview of the things presented during our PD, because we cover so much, and I think that's one of the fun parts about PD is that you tend to leave overwhelmed because you have so many things going on in your head, so many ideas. But that's why we're going to do this. We're going to review this, we're going to record it, and then you can rewatch it and discuss it with your PLCs. I definitely recommend, before we really get started, everyone needs to go grab a copy of this example instructional framework with the notations in it, and also grab the blank copy so you can make notes in it as you're thinking about your own lesson. And that's really what I want you to do as you're watching, is just reflect back on how you begin a lesson, what happens in the middle of a lesson, and then how do you close off a lesson and prepare students for the next day's learning. Let's begin by going to our slide deck, which you can access at the following bit.ly link, bit.ly/margined, MARGIN, capital ED. It is case sensitive. Pick up this slide deck, make a copy, make notes on it, and get all my citations off of that if you wish. Should you have any questions, feel free to email or tweet me. I got my handles down there below. School teams collaboratively design, implement, and refine shared instructional frameworks with the intent of increasing student achievement now in your subject area, in other subject areas, next year, and after graduation. That should be the intent, right? It should not be about taking away the autonomy of the teacher or undermining them as a professional. An instructional framework is successful when it creates observable evidence of student engagement and learning. An instructional framework benefits students who lack structure and support outside of school. When an instructional framework is used regularly across grades and subjects, it should increase clarity and decrease stress on the student. Unlike their life outside of school, they know what to expect from the teacher and what's expected of them, because we have a structured system. And that takes the guesswork out of the learning process. It should increase clarity of what is expected of them as the student, and this increased clarity, persistently implemented, also increases commitment in the student. Dr. Doug Fisher says in his book, Visible Learning, students learn best when there is a solid organizational structure that allows them to learn in a variety of ways and with a variety of materials. And that organizational structure isn't limited to just a graphic organizer, but it's how you structure your classroom, how you structure your learning routine, the way you present the curriculum. So during this overview, we're going to explore a draft instructional framework focused on bell ringers and exit tickets that are scheduled, planned, and developed in advance of a lesson. This helps students, but also teachers, because there is no more guesswork to how you will start and end the lesson. You've set a schedule and chosen effective instructional practices ahead of time, so you just have to focus on applying it to the content used to teach your classes day in and day out. We'll also discuss strategies for courses heavily reliant on lectures, note-taking, and read-alouds. Our first requirement of our instructional framework is all about relationship building by greeting students at the door. This is also where you can quickly direct them to the bell ringer task or provide any special instructions to get them started. If a student looks particularly troubled, here's your chance to catch them at the door and try to resolve the conflict before it negatively impacts the whole class or throws off your routine and structure. Let them know you're here to support them. Naturally, you could also use this opportunity to catch that one squirrely kid who always gets everyone off task, sometimes because they're disruptive and sometimes because they're hilarious. And you can have a quick pep talk with them while the majority of the class gets on task, and then you can maintain that momentum. So greeting the students at the door and using bell ringers is really all about gaining and maintaining that student's attention.
You may remember the bell ringer one-pager we've studied as a PLC before. I'll just pull it up again. bit.ly/level up bell ringers. Boop. And this should come up on your browser window. Go to File and make a copy or download as a PDF. Oh, I like bell ringers that have a clear connection to the main lesson of the day, but it's not always necessary. Reflecting on Dr. Tate's 4 categories, addressing a need, novelty, meaning, or emotion, you could give your students a break and low-stakes bell ringer, like a ridiculous and humorous writing exercise, or even start class with one of those BuzzFeed quizzes that helps evaluate your own personality, if it's appropriate for school. I definitely recommend reviewing them first. Do people still do those BuzzFeed quizzes? I haven't seen them around in a while, but I remember them being really fun. So here it is, my proposed bell ringer schedule for each week, to be modified based on the content I will be focused on at the time. So if my class is reading a bunch of short stories, they will have the same type of bell ringer each Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, as they would when they read a novel like The Hate You Give, or something from Shakespeare. But the content of each bell ringer will reflect the unit or reading we're currently studying. So what do you do with bell ringers after students have completed them? You could grade them, and that's fine, but it's more important to also let students use them as an icebreaker for discussions in class. We want them talking about the stuff they're learning and studying. So make sure to give them 1 to 2 minutes to turn and talk, find an elbow partner, use a mingle strategy like we use chips and salsa to get them sharing their response to the bell ringer. Then if time permits, have 1 or 2 volunteers share with the whole class. That's always fun. So let's look at some examples. Let's look at a breakdown of example bell ringers for each day. Mondays. Am I right? I purposely chose the quick write bell ringer for Mondays because it's just challenging enough. Mondays are already such a drag, but I also want students to work hard and get back in the learning gear and high expectations of my classroom. So a multiple choice pop quiz is too low level thinking. They're just going to guess on it anyways and just write A. Likewise, if I did a test prep activity, like if I gave them a quick ACT practice test, that's a little too much. That's a little too high level. Quick writes are usually pretty fun. It's first draft, thus low stakes. It's flow of thought, reflective writing that they can do in their class spirals. So for instance, this example is asking students to reflect on a quote and write about it. You might throw a topic on the board and have them demonstrate their background knowledge about the topic. For example, recently I had the Fifth Amendment on the board as a bell ringer for a social studies class, and the students had to write everything they already knew or thought they knew about the Fifth Amendment. The students then had the opportunity to stand up and find someone else in class to share what they wrote down, and they could add or modify their list of things they knew about the Fifth Amendment if someone had something new or more accurate information. Tuesdays, we kick it up a notch and mix in a little test prep and practice testing. You can typically find released items and practice tests for most major state tests. For example, I'm suggesting the ACT question of the day as a resource to download and give students. You might have them practice reading a passage from the test, or they can answer one practice question every Tuesday. But the real learning comes from discussing why the answer choice they made is the best and why the others aren't, specifically for the ACT. Definitely don't just let them know whether they got the practice question correct or incorrect and move on. We have to have a discussion about these things and really just break down the phrasing, wording, and the little tricks, the hidden tricks that ACT and, I guess all standardized question writers embed in the passages and especially in the questions. So it's actually just as important to dissect the reading of a test question as it is to dissect the actual question itself. Make sure that students are able to tear apart the prompt or the question and know exactly what is being asked.
You can go to my.act.org and sign in and then access these question of the day prompts. You'll find a welcome screen that looks like this once you've signed up. You're going to want to scroll down past the costly materials, and right below that you'll find in a box that, as you can see, is not as graphically impressive as the other 3 boxes. But you can get those free materials, the question of the day and the sample test items, and they'll look something like this. And you can scroll through and go through all of them all the way back to 2015. But I'll tell you right now, they've just been using the same passages and the same questions since 2015, so that's kind of but it's a good place to start downloading those. And I archive them and save them and pull them out when it's time for a little ACT prep and ACT practice. So Wednesdays, we kind of go back down. It's the middle of the week. We're almost a little brain dead. So we have a quick vocabulary builder activity. It's just kind of nice and neat for us to break up the week. We'll work out and build up our vocab. There are many different activities to build vocabulary, but the Freyer model is proven to be pretty successful, and I think most are pretty familiar with it. I'd have students create the graphic organizer in their class spirals. I'm not about making printouts of the graphic organizer when you could easily draw this. I don't need to put it on a paper for you and waste my print count. I'd also recommend Marley Springer, her book Teaching the Critical Vocabulary of the Common Core. Yeah, I know it's got Common Core on it, but this is actually a really great book to pick out some high-level vocab, and it's just full of nothing but vocabulary activities that you can do. So you could take this book and do this every Wednesday, just one of these activities. It's a really good, worthwhile buy. Also by ASCD. On Thursdays, I want to practice their multimodal literacies. We'll interpret multimodal literacies, visuals, infographics, comic strips, charts, graphs, video clips, memes, etc. And the I notice, I wonder is an ideal strategy for practicing this. Require you to have some sticky notes and some board space somewhere in the room for students to write their interpretations of whatever you're posting. I have my favorite graphic here of the brain getting lit from hearing words, seeing words, speaking words, and generating words. It's what I like to start the year off with. But you can also go to New York Times education blog, or even just Google New York Times writing prompts, and they have some visual writing prompts that are really great for this activity as well. Shout out to New York Times. They have some really cool stuff for teachers for free. On Fridays I want to try and address the forgetting curve, this right here. By the way, this would be a great graphic actually to share on Thursdays. What do you notice? What do you wonder about this graphic? But we want to look at Hermann Ebbinghaus's research and the amount of knowledge we do not retain as time goes on. Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered that without any reinforcement or connections to prior knowledge, information is quickly forgotten. Roughly 56% in 1 hour, 66% after a day, and 75% after 6 days. It's kind of disheartening, right? All that time you spent making those brilliant lessons, and students forget like almost half of it after 20 minutes of leaving you? Got to do something about that. So what Hermann Ebbinghaus said is that you can combat this by spreading out the learning through distributed practice. We have to regularly reflect on what we learned so we stay lit and don't forget the important skills we spend so much time developing. To that effort, every Friday, I want to do a little recall practice. I really like retrieval practices developed by Dr. Pooja K. Agarwal and published on retrievalpractice.org. This is one of my favorites here, particularly because you can just save a copy of this in a template form and add questions to it each week based on what you observe from students. You can even add questions that students generate to it. And then at the end of the week, every Friday, you see how much they can recall or retain. You can choose to let them answer questions using a study buddy or use their notes or do it completely from memory.
It's just good brain work, and they can try and build their score by choosing what's in the purple, which are worth 4 points, questions that go back further than 2 weeks from material you studied more than 2 weeks ago, or they can you get 3 points for questions about content studied 2 weeks ago, 2 points for questions studied last week, and then of course this week they can get 1 point for answering questions that were studied this week. So now is a good time to actually take a brain break and test your own retrieval skills. So find a friend and share 3 takeaways from the information presented. Takeaways are the details, facts, and ideas that stand out in your mind as most memorable or you think are most important. And again, this is another decent visual to use on Thursdays with the I Notice, I Wonder right here, this 10-minute rule. So pause. Note-taking, lectures, and read-alouds. So, what strategies are we implementing to get students to talk about their learning? And when do you have the time to talk about all that great content? Let's discuss some strategies, some go-to techniques, some go-to instructional practices that get students moving and sharing, and why that's important. So note-taking is great. I love it. Note-taking has a worthwhile effect size, too, of 0.50. And better yet, organizing or using your notes for learning tasks has an effect size of 0.85. So we definitely want students to take notes and use their class spirals regularly. But even this practice needs to be embedded with regular opportunities for students to discuss or risk disengagement. And that will lead to more time lost due to the need to reteach or repeat yourself. So we want to have this cycle where we start with the model note-taking, but we break it up with discussion techniques. Using the 10-minute rule, find someone to compare and share notes with after 10 minutes of close note-taking. Close that notebook and walk across the room to talk to someone and see how much you can recall from memory. Take that extra 2 minutes to chat and then get back to work and repeat the cycle as necessary. They might be able to go over 10 minutes, but generally 10 to 15 minutes is a good benchmark for you. So, here's a list of strategies just to have in your pocket that you can always throw out and embed regularly. Maybe you can brainstorm some more, but here are 6. You can have students compare and share notes and brainstorm examples and non-examples of the topic or concept they're writing about. You can have students close their notebooks and recall 3 takeaways. Again, facts, details, and ideas that they deem most important or memorable, and explain why they are memorable. Have students draft pop quiz questions about the material. This is a good opportunity to teach them how to write academic questions. We'll talk more on that later. Or simply turn to an elbow partner and explain a concept, or summarize an event in your own words. Use a conversation frame to help students have better academic discussions. Just a reminder of what a conversation frame looks like. I always keep these templates here, conversation frames that students can use to guide their conversations with each other about topics. You can partner up and even collaborate on a gist sentence, a 1-sentence summary of your notes using exactly 20 words, which is my personal favorite. What about lectures? Say, I'm a brilliant lecturer. Students don't want me to stop talking. Well, maybe so, but lecture definitely requires students to move, discuss, and ask questions too. It's really easy for a knowledgeable teacher to get carried away during a lecture on a subject they know a lot about. But you want to consider setting a timer to remind yourself to pause and get students up and moving. And you can incorporate those same strategies to break up the lecture and check for understanding. Hopefully they're taking notes during the lecture, or they're filling out a study guide of some sort as you're lecturing to them too, and they can use those for the conversation as well. Read alouds. So
I personally, and this is just me personally, I feel we should want our students to read independently as much as possible, but I did recently come around to have a better appreciation for read alouds after reading this book, Who's Doing the Work by Jan Birkins and Kim Yaris. So now I believe it is important for teachers to strategically choose which chapters of a novel are appropriately complex for students to read independently and which are complex enough to merit read alouds mixed with your guidance and discussion. I think that is important. But like lectures, teachers can go too far with read alouds when they're reading something particularly engrossing. But we have to check ourselves before we wreck reading for our students. So for me, I think my Achilles Heel would be The Most Dangerous Game. I love reading that short story. But I should break it up and just read certain parts and have students independently practice reading other parts of that short story. Even short stories you can break up in that way. And of course, embed those discussion strategies and have students always return to the text to guide discussions. So before they would return to their notes or study guide, now we want to somehow incorporate that they have to return to the text and close read or reread in order to use the discussion questions. So how about practicing that right now and finding a friend to share and discuss what we've covered in this presentation so far? Let's play Faux Show and Tell. So think about the strengths, hurdles, and opportunities that can grow from implementing what we've discussed thus far. Here's some extra guiding questions to help guide your thoughts. As far as strengths, from these bell ringers to these discussion strategies, what's great? What can we learn from this? What revelations did I take away? What about hurdles? What would not meet my students' needs? What would not work for my teaching style? Why or why not? And of course, opportunities. If we just went full force and embedded these with fidelity across every grade and subject area, if we tried it, what could the possible outcomes be for that? If we don't try it, what could the possible outcomes be? Share out loud with a buddy. Take a minute to unload those thoughts on the teacher BFF. Exit tickets. Just as we have pre-planned and scheduled out bell ringers, we're going to do the same for our exit tickets. We should have plenty of opportunities to conduct informal formative assessments through the discussions in class. Exit tickets, however, are a great formative assessment opportunity to collect tangible evidence of student learning. I have mine strategically planned here to get students involved in the assessment process and practice more self-reflection. So Mondays, we're going to start with the summarization strategy, the gist sentence. Summarization has an effect size of 0.79, which has actually gone up in the last year. It's definitely worth regular practice. For more strategies supporting research on the complexity and importance of this skill, check out Robert Marzano's article, Summarizing to Comprehend. It's a good, quick read, great for PLCs to read. On Tuesdays, after students have been taught to write better academic questions, I like to end Tuesdays by having them practice writing leveled questions. At the beginning of school, I'll spend a day working from the handout above and have students practice writing leveled questions in their class spirals. We'll do this regularly, and they always have the handout to use as a reference too. Wednesdays are fun because I will take the questions from Tuesdays that the students generated and present them in a pop quiz. You can always use questions in the back of your textbook too, I guess. But it's really fun when students recognize it's their question on the pop quiz. Thursdays, we start to get more self-reflective, and I'm intentionally looking for feedback from my students about me as their teacher through this. So using the 3-2-1 exit ticket, they reflect on their learning, practice generating questions again, this time with no specific direction like on Tuesdays. It's just open-ended, whatever they feel. And they leave me a comment to help me be a better teacher, help me grow. I tell them specifically I want to be the best teacher for them, so I need them to be fair and honest with me about how I did supporting them in their learning and presenting the curriculum week in and week out. Finally, I want to end the week giving students time to self-reflect on their work themselves and their actions. So I'll post some sentence stems like the examples here and ask them to choose one to complete. So I leave you now with my works cited list. There are a lot of great reads here, and I referenced them during this presentation. I have a lot more reading to do, and that coffee isn't going to drink itself. So until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your students, and take care of each other. Adios!